Welcome to Chapter 4, Part 6. In this part of Chapter 4, we'll talk about monitoring and controlling project execution. No matter how much time you spend planning for a particular project, changes are inevitable on most projects, so it's important to develop and follow a process to monitor and control changes. In other words, change is not bad. It's okay to deviate from your original project plan. However, this change has to be done in a mindful, controlled fashion. So, monitoring project work includes collecting, measuring, and disseminating performance information. So, monitoring is all about this. During the execution phase, you are comparing what you plan for with what is happening in reality, right? And if there is a big deviation between what you plan for, let's say in terms of the timeline and how the project evolves in reality, then this is a problem. So you've discovered a problem through monitoring. Now we just mentioned that that monitoring involves comparing the actual flow of events with what was planned. So that planning, that project management plan, that initial timeline, initial budget constitutes an important component of monitoring because it's that baseline against which you compare the reality, right, to see whether the project is on track or not. So that's what project monitoring is about. Now, control as opposed to monitoring is, I would say, it's one step above. So monitoring means like passively observing whether things are on track. Now, controlling means going beyond that. Once you identify something that is not on track, then you go ahead and you intervene. And you're doing this in an integrated fashion, meaning if you want to intervene, you will intervene from all kinds of directions to correct the problem or to influence the factors that create changes to ensure that changes are beneficial, right? Um, to explain this objective of integrated change control, um, if something is not on track, then you may be tempted to do a change to anything. Let's say you may want to hire additional people. That's fine, but it needs to be done in a mindful, integrated fashion. Meaning there needs to be a formal procedure to look at all the factors that led to a particular issue, and then based on this formal investigation, you decide whether you're going to hire extra people or not. Because sometimes it could be that you don't need to hire extra people. You just need to rearrange people's jobs or tasks or resequence them so that you can accomplish what you originally planned for without hiring additional people. So it's very important to look at all the factors that are somehow related to a particular change that is being proposed. Also, doing integrated change control or simply control in an integrated mindful fashion involves determining that a change has occurred. In other words, following up if there was a request for a change, you need to go back and see whether this change were actually implemented, and then managing actual changes as they occur. I mean, it's easy to say that, oh, we need to change that, but to actually implement and manage that change implementation, it can be a difficult task. So managing or change management is a very important sub area under this integrated change control. So yeah, just to expand on this idea that change is normal, it's inevitable. The formal view was similar to this waterfall approach to project management. The idea was that the project team should strive to do exactly what was planned on time and within budget. Now, the problem is that stakeholders rarely agree up front on the project scope and time and cost estimates. And so no matter how much time you spend discussing and thinking, and analyzing scope, time, and cost estimates, they will never be perfect. So the modern view is that since all those things are just estimates, they're not perfect, then change is inevitable, and project management is more of a process of constant communication, negotiation, and adjustment and readjustment. So changes are not only inevitable, they're also beneficial. I mean, sometimes sticking to your original plan when life tells you that this plan is not realistic is akin to madness. So you should pay attention to those clues, and sometimes not changing is really a crime because it will something that will undermine the chances of your project being successful. So that's why you need to be open for change and actually plan for change. Uh, so But this change cannot be chaotic. It cannot be ad hoc. You need to have a formal change control system. So it has to be there needs to be a formal documented process that describes when and how official project documents and work may be changed. So among other things, this formal system may describe who is authorized to make changes and how to make them. Okay, so it's okay to request a change. It's okay to implement a change, but it needs to be done in a formal way. So one element of that formal change system can be the so-called change control board. It's a formal group or committee of people responsible for approving or rejecting changes on a project. So whenever there is a change request, this committee needs to look at it, and this committee needs to be representative, meaning it needs to be comprised of people representing various stakeholders or various groups of stakeholders. Because you see a change in one area, let's say a small change in the budget may be requested by somebody in finance. But if you change the budget a little bit, let's say you cut certain funds, then it will impact the scope, it will impact all other areas. So everybody needs to have like some say on whether a particular change is beneficial or not, whether it can be or cannot be implemented. So this formal change control board provides guidelines for preparing change requests. They evaluate change requests and manage the implementation of approved changes. So they follow up and see whether a particular change was actually implemented or not. So ideally, you need to include stakeholders from the entire organization in that change control board, or at least all stakeholders that are somehow related to your project. Changes need to be timely, but at the same time, once again, you cannot please everybody. You cannot make changes, instantaneously. So maybe as a part of your policy for integrated change control, you may have like a distinction between the changes that need to be done immediately or changes that can wait, right? So maybe if it's something urgent, something that can jeopardize success of your project, then you may need to have a 48-hour policy, meaning certain change requests they have to be processed within 48 hours. But other changes that are not essential, maybe you will ignore them, or you will allow your committee to have a longer time to evaluate that particular change request. Now, when it comes to developing software products, configuration management becomes an important task. So configuration management means identifying and controlling the functional and physical design characteristics of a project and formally documenting all those requirements. So some organizations they put a specific individual in charge, the so-called configuration management specialist, who is solely responsible for compiling, documenting, and managing those product requirements, let's say software product requirements. And the end goal of this role is to ensure that the descriptions of the project products are correct and complete at all times. So this is something that's very important when you're developing a software product or any kind of product. In fact, there's a certification program for people who want to specialize in configuration management. Under Scrum project management framework, the role that comes the closest to this area of responsibility is probably product owner. Product owner is the person who owns the product, meaning the person or an organization for whom you're delivering this particular project, or for whom this product that you're supposed to deliver as a result of this project is delivered. So this person is in a good position to understand what needs to be done, what kind of product he or she needs at the end. So that's a formal role within Scrum methodology that seems to correspond to this area. So some general advice or best practices on performing change control. So view project management as a project of constant communication, negotiation, and adjustment. So it's impossible to avoid change. So not only you need to be open to this whole possibility of change, you need to plan for it, right? You need to make sure that all of your processes can accommodate change. You also need to establish a formal change control system that will include, among other things, forming a change control board. People, stakeholders, representatives from various areas of an organization that would formally analyze change requests and decide whether they're going to proceed with it or not. Use effective configuration management when you're developing a particular product. So somebody needs to be in charge, somebody needs to be keeping track of the requirements, of all the changes that you're proposing to those product requirements and so forth. Also, you need to define procedures for making changes in a timely fashion. You also need to use written and oral performance report to help identify and manage change. Software can be used for keeping track of what needs to be done and for entering changes to your original plans. And leadership is very important. You need to focus on leading the project team and meeting the overall project goals and expectations, because it's very easy to get lost in all those little details. It's easy to get paralyzed by all those changes and obstacles. So it's very important to lead people in a way where they're focused on the most important goals and deliverables of the project. So this completes part 6 of chapter 4. Thank you for watching.